What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2020 Jeep Gladiator Mojave. Huge thanks to Jeep for providing me here with the new Mojave version of the Gladiator to review for you guys today. So about the Mojave, well, this is the first desert rated Jeep here, and so that means that it can handle high-speed desert running and desert activities, and so it's appropriately beefed up to handle that stuff as well. And so it has a bunch of great mechanical upgrades that'll be important to those of you who do actually want to use this for the stuff it's intended to do. But I think as far as the looks go, it looks fantastic, especially in this hydro blue color. Really pops with the orange accents, which are standard on all Mojaves, to have those orange accents here for the script on the hood, the tow hooks. You have unique wheels here that are 17 inches, and you have 33-inch tires just like the Rubicon. A lot of the stuff on here is like the Rubicon, although several things have been tweaked for better high-speed off-roading instead of the low-speed off-roading that the Rubicon is specialized for. But I really love the orange accents, especially with the blue. It's a great combo. I also love this hood scoop. Now, it isn't functional, unfortunately. It's blocked off, but it gives it a much meaner look here, I think, as well. That combined with the additional 1-inch lift you have over even a Rubicon means this thing really sits up high. It also gives you a better approach angle of 44.7 degrees now, which again will help with tackling those sand dunes and things like that. I suppose I cannot speak from experience. I've just driven this vehicle on the road, but I know that the Gladiator is a very good vehicle off-road. I already last year took a Gladiator Rubicon down all kinds of crazy trails. I went down a mini waterfall and everything else. So I can vouch for the off-road capability of the Gladiator, and this Mojave should be, just as good, if not better, at doing all that stuff that the Rubicon can do, aside from one or two things, but it makes up for that by, again, doing the high-speed stuff. And with this front lift, it really helps to show off these Fox shocks, which are 2.5-inch shocks, and they're internal bypass shocks, so they have, the very cool setup there, the way they look, and out back there, it has the external cooling reservoir as well, so that it helps it to, be a little bit cooler whenever you are, jumping this thing over sand dunes or whatever you want to jump it over. It can handle that stuff for a prolonged period of time better with these shocks, and they certainly look the part as well as being very functional. You also have a 1/2 inch wider track, which is very tiny when you're talking about a vehicle this big, but it does help to give you additional stability as well with that slightly wider track. Otherwise, it's the same Gladiator that everyone is already familiar with from the past year here. They all come in a crew cab here, and they all have that shorter box out back there. And the box is great, for what you're going to do for light truck, mid-size pickup trucks type stuff. You have various tie downs and lights there, and you also have a power outlet here, the way this one is optioned, and a damped tailgate, although it would be nice to have some type of built-in step or something to make it easier to get up in here, especially for these higher Gladiators, that are lifted up. It can be a little bit more of a leap to get into this bed over some of the competitors, but again, you're buying a Jeep Gladiator because you want the off-road capability, and the Gladiator will do it better than all the others in this segment. And so, that's the main takeaway here from this. But overall, I still think the Gladiator looks so cool. I love that they stayed so true to the Jeep roots, but we're also, so committed to making it a very good truck as well. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The Gladiator here has this very cool jerry can style key with the buttons there on the back. Now, it is remote entry, as you can see, but the crazy thing is this $63,000 Jeep Mojave does not have the proximity key. So that is an option this one just didn't have. And I know that Jeep likes doing things a la carte, but I feel like they should at least throw in a proximity key as standard, because having to dig into your pocket and pull out a key to unlock this car every time is a little bit annoying for a vehicle that's this expensive. But anyway, it is keyless start here, so you just leave the key in your pocket at that point, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. And if you're curious to hear about the interior in the Gladiator Mojave, my wife and I actually did a full in-depth interior review on this vehicle, and so I will link that above. You can go check that out if you want to hear all the details about the Gladiator interior, and on the Mojave in particular here. It has all these orange accents and sportier seats, and it's just a very fun looking interior and very appropriate to match the outside of this vehicle. Alright, so setting off here in the 2020 Jeep Gladiator Mojave. So the first thing you notice, well, Jeeps are a very unique driving position if you've never driven one before. If you have, though, this will feel right at home like any other Jeep. So, you have excellent visibility, especially here in the Mojave, since you have that 1-inch additional lift in the front over even a Rubicon, and you have a 1/2 inch higher ride height overall even compared to the Rubicon. So it's going to be even higher seating position than any other Gladiator, and you have a great view forward, of course. You do have this hood that you see, but I mean, you have a nice short dashboard short here. I mean, insanely short. I think the only other vehicle that's this short outside of the Wranglers and the Gladiators is the Mercedes G-Wagon. Everything else has a bigger dashboard than this, but it means you really, you know, feel pretty close to the windshield. You know, nice boxy view, very easy to see out, and of course you can take the roof off in the Gladiators here and the doors and everything, and have be totally open to the elements, I suppose, if you want. So excellent visibility. Another thing that I've noticed here about the Mojave version in particular, the Gladiator, is that the ride isn't any worse than any other Gladiator. Like, I had a Rubicon that was a manual last year. You can go watch that video if you're curious to hear my thoughts on the manual. But yeah, you know, it still rides basically the same. You have the same 33-inch tires, and these Fox shocks, though, they're not any stiffer or anything. And I've actually noticed a little bit better handling, which I'll talk about more as we get out onto a back road. But yeah, otherwise, you know, everything is very Jeep-like. You know, the brakes have a nice, good response to them. Throttle response is, you know, kind of relaxed in typical Jeep fashion. Steering is very relaxed. You know, this vehicle likes to wander, and the steering does not help because it is very loose and relaxed with its setup as well. And so, you know, you just find yourself turning more and, you know, steering more, and also just correcting more, especially on the highway and stuff. You know, you're really going back and forth and sawing at the wheel a lot because, you know, you can see I'm like doing really aggressive turns and it's barely turning this thing. It's kind of funny, and you can feel how the vehicle rocks and stuff as well. It does have a very, you know, Jeep type setup still. So when you're driving this, you'll definitely just know that you have a very different type of driving sensation than anything else, basically. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see about an acceleration, shall we? And here we go. It does get up and respond well, and you can feel that front end lift up. And then it moves down the road very nicely. So the Gladiator Mojave here runs the same engine as any other Gladiator. So it is a 3.6 liter naturally aspirated V6 engine. It does 285 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 is about 8 seconds or so. So definitely, you know, not super fast in a straight line, but it is a pretty heavy vehicle. It weighs almost 5,000 pounds. It's like 49 and change. And so that means that you definitely have a vehicle that is very weighty feeling whenever you're getting up and going. And this V6 engine, I know it's tried and true, and a lot of Jeep people really love it, but after experiencing the 2.0T in the Wrangler, I think that motor has more low-end punch with that turbo, and I think that actually feels better for a vehicle like this because you have a lot of grunt down low. And this motor has grunt too, but it just feels like it really has to rev to get the most out of it. And for a vehicle like this, it's kind of backwards, because you would think you would want more power down low, and like the diesel motor you can get in the Wrangler is even better. And so I'm hoping that both of those engines end up here in the Gladiator eventually. But in the meantime, the V6 is fine. It's just, you know, thankfully you do have this 8-speed automatic transmission here in this one. It's a $2,000 option for this transmission, but it is certainly, I think, a must-have, because after spending a week with the manual Gladiator last year with the Rubicon, the way those are geared, the gearing is way too tall, and it's not a great experience. As much as I love manuals, and every car I've ever owned has been a manual transmission, I would hands down go for an automatic in a Jeep. I think it's just having more gears and having them closely spaced together here at the 8-speed means that you have peppier acceleration. It still isn't going to feel quick, but it's better. And so to me, that is the way I would do one of these. So I like the way this one is configured with the automatic here. But other things, you know, just cruising on a main road here, you definitely hear some road noise from those tires. You know, it's those 33-inch off-roading tires definitely make some noise, and that's something you're not going to miss. It's also, you know, you get some wind noise and stuff, especially at highway speeds. You get a good amount of wind noise and stuff. Again, it's a Jeep, so all of these things are things that you're expecting and hopefully willing to compromise on. It's not going to be super refined, but you do have the fun driving experience of just, again, being more involved because you have to steer more and because it likes to sway around more and you have very low limits. You have to take corners slower, all that type of stuff. But it's all part of, you know, this more involving experience that Jeep owners really seem to love. So all the exclusive stuff for the Mojave, there is a whole laundry list of stuff, and so if there's anything that I forget, I will list it on the screen there. But the basic stuff here is you get those Fox shocks with the internal bypass, you know, shocks, and the external reservoirs to help them to cool off better. And so that's going to be the main thing that really helps. That extra half-inch width for the track also helps to, again, give you that better, higher speed stability. Now, I haven't noticed any kind of radical change over the Rubicon that I drove last year as far as as, you know, street stability. We'll see when we go around some corners how it feels. You know, it is 98 pounds lighter though over a Rubicon. Part of that is because you don't have a locking front diff. You only have a locking rear diff. One of the cool things though of the Mojave here is you have this off-road plus mode, and that is something exclusive to the Mojave here and allows you to do a couple of different things. It'll change your throttle response and all that, but it also will allow you to go into 4 high at higher speeds and lock it in that gear for, you know, higher speeds than what you usually get with you know, a Rubicon or something like that. It also will change your shift points as well as your traction control settings, again, to all maximize that stuff for that higher speed off-road capability. But coming up to some corners here, let's see how the Gladiator Mojave handles them. Obviously I'm going to take it kind of slow, but you know, I think it actually is flatter than the Rubicon, I think. So, and I mean, I don't know, you know, I haven't driven a non-Rubicon Gladiator since the launch when I drove the Overland version as well. And so that might, you know, be a little bit better because it's a little more street-based with their tires and stuff. But I think this actually, it's pretty flat for you know, a big long Jeep truck. I think, you know, one of the things I really love about the Gladiator is that you have better stability than the Wrangler because you have a longer wheelbase. And so for a cruiser, I think this has better road manners than a Wrangler because everything's stretched out a little bit more, and because you have some more pickup truck style back ends on this thing versus the much more Jeep style back end you have with the Wrangler. So, you know, I've always thought that, you know, between the Wrangler and the Gladiator, I personally would rather daily drive the Gladiator because, you know, the road manners are a little bit better, and as someone who's not a huge off-road enthusiast, I like having, you know, the better handling on-road. But again, this thing will keep up just fine with the Wranglers and stuff off-road. Now, because it's a little bit longer, you know, you can, you know, get a little high-centered a little bit easier, I suppose, and, you know, the breakover angle isn't going to be as good as, like, you know, the Wrangler and stuff. But as far as the approach angle, like I said, that's better. The departure angle isn't quite as good, I think, here for the Mojave because, again, the lift is in the front a little bit more than the back, but that's, again, to prioritize, you know, jumping over sand dunes and things like that. So it makes sense for what this vehicle is set up for. The whole frame has also been beefed up here to handle the more, you know, taxing demands of jumping this thing and doing all that kind of stuff. So that, yeah, they reinforced the frame. It has unique ball joints and knuckles, and everything has been beefed up. So the takeaway here is that this is going to be better at high speed off-roading than the Rubicon or any other version of a Jeep for that matter, and that again is why it earns that Desert Rated badge. Also, the transfer case here in the Mojave is actually not the same one as the Rubicon. It's instead shared with all the other Gladiators. I just had to do a Jeep wave there. It's another thing you constantly, there's a lot of Jeeps at least around here in western Pennsylvania, and so that's something that you always have to do is a wave to the other Jeeps, and it's always fun. It's a great community. But anyway, the transfer case is the same as other Gladiators, not the same as the Rubicon, and so that again was what Jeep selected as being the best setup for the Mojave and what it is used for. I think it is probably the best handling Gladiator version, at least as far as the off-road versions go. Like I said, I think maybe the standard street versions might be a little bit better, but they also don't have these shocks, which I think really helps give it a flatter ride. And you also have these seats, which are a little more aggressive, which hold you in place a little bit better than other Gladiators. And I also want to mention, you know, some of the competitors here to this vehicle. So I think the closest competitor would be the Colorado ZR2 from Chevy. And it's been several years since I reviewed one of those, but I do remember that had better handling, but I don't think that's going to be going over trails as well as this will. So if you want, you know, the off-road type thing, but you want a little bit better on-road handling, that might be a better choice. But again, if you're buying something like this, chances are it's because you want the off-road capability, and Jeep is going to be the standout #1 brand of choice if that's what you're wanting to do with something like this. The other one I will mention this is a desert running setup. Ford Raptors are a good bit more expensive, even with this one being loaded up at 63 grand. Trying to get a Ford Raptor for, you know, new for that kind of money is even going to be challenging. But what I'll say is that the Raptor, which I did have for a week and drove around, you know, many of these same corners, that was a lot more sway happy. And I mean, that was set up to be really soft and to really, you know, jump well over, you know, sand dunes and all that kind of stuff, because it's set up for a very similar type of thing with the Raptor. And I think the Raptor, it's just so much bigger. This is going to be more nimble because it's smaller dimensions, and it's just also not as heavy and enormous as the Raptor. And so I actually think this probably feels a little bit better in corners than the Raptor. But you know, the suspension just moves around so much in the Raptor, and I think this moves around obviously, but not as much as the Raptor. And so it actually means you have a slightly firmer ride on the street probably than the Raptor. So for a daily driver, the Raptor is still going to be more comfortable, but you just move around way more in the Raptor than you do in this. So this, I think, feels a little more confident, if that makes sense, even though, again, the Raptor's doing what it's supposed to. It's just a little bit disorienting at times. So that'll just come down to personal preference, and again, your budget, because Raptors are way more expensive in many cases, but just an interesting thing to note there. But whenever you do just, you know, chill out and just cruise on a main road, the Gladiator, again, is just a fun cruiser. Like I said, it's more involved with all the steering and stuff, but it's a nice thing to just cruise around in because you don't have to be going fast to have fun. It's one of these vehicles you can drive the speed limit and still feel like you're going pretty quickly because, you know, the limits are so low, and it can be fun at legal speeds, which is something you can't really say for a lot of other vehicles, especially sporty vehicles these days. And so that is one of the unique fun things here about the Gladiator, if, you know, the high seating position and all that kind of stuff is your thing. But the last couple of things to mention here, the first is the fuel economy in the Gladiator. Again, if you're buying one of these, you probably don't care, or you shouldn't care, because it's not going to be great. But so I've driven this vehicle 98.6 miles, so basically 100 miles now, and in my driving, which I will say wasn't very much highway driving, it was mostly city stop and go, you know, cruising around, that type of stuff, back roads driving, and anyway, I've only managed to get 15.3 mpg. Now these are rated at 17 in the city, 22 on the highway, and 19 combined. So on average, I do tend to get about 2 mpg less than the city rating in most vehicles that I drive around in and do these similar drive loops and stuff. So, you know, I think that's to be expected, but it is still kind of low. You know, but again, the thing has the aerodynamics of a condominium, and it's, you know, again, you got this V6, which isn't very efficient or anything, even though the 8-speed tries to maximize that as best as it can. But yeah, so that's just going to be the thing there. And again, hopefully they'll introduce the diesel and the turbo 4-cylinder to give you more fuel efficient options for those that might be interested in that. But that's just the reality of the situation, is you're going to be going through gas fairly quickly here in the Gladiator. Another thing, though, to mention is the pricing here in the Gladiator. So, you know, the Mojaves here have a base price of $50,000, which is the same as the Rubicon. So, you know, it's kind of, once you get up to these higher trims of the Gladiator, it just comes down to what do you want. Do you want to do low-speed off-roading or high-speed off-roading? If you want low-speed stuff, go for the Rubicon. If you want high-speed stuff, go for the Mojave. You do get a couple extra cool things here with the Mojave, like that hood scoop and, you know, the orange accents and stuff over the Rubicon, which gives you red accents and no hood scoop and stuff. But, you know, so it just comes down to, you know, what your preference is. But remember, since Jeep does everything a la carte, even at $50,000, you don't get anything as standard, really. You know, like I said, I still don't have a proximity key, so, you know, that's something you have to add in. The heated seats, the heated steering wheel that this one has, those are additional options. This 8.4-inch screen is also another option. So there's all these different things you have to add on, and that's how this one goes from the $50,000 starting price to this one being just over $63,000 as tested. But once you do get up to that $63,000 price tag, I mean, that is getting in Raptor territory. And you know, with the Raptor, you get a twin turbo V6. Again, you get way more space. You get a bigger vehicle that's going to be, you know, a good bit, I would guess, more rugged, you know, with, again, having the high-speed stability. If you are truly buying this for high-speed stability, I think the Raptor will be probably better than this, although, again, I would have to test them back-to-back to truly say that. But that's just, you know, I feel like my hunch, just because it has a wider track for the Raptor and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's the thing, is it is getting expensive. So, again, it really comes down to, you know, if you are doing exclusively high-speed desert type stuff, then, you know, maybe the Raptor might be more appealing. But if you're going to be doing maybe some of that, but then you still want the Jeep nimbleness and the ability of the Jeep to do all the things that the Raptor can't do, as far as, you know, rock crawling and all that kind of type of stuff, which you can still do a lot of that here in this. Again, like I said, really all you're missing over the Rubicon is the locking front diff. You know, so if that's an absolute necessity, then that's the only thing you're missing. But otherwise, I think this is going to do all the same stuff that the other Gladiators do as well, and just give you some of that additional desert capability, which is what they made this for. So great to give people options. I love that Jeep continues to have so many different variants, and continues to offer every little thing for every little niche of buyer to satisfy exactly what they're looking for. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on the Gladiator Mojave here in the comments below. Be sure to watch the interior review again if you're curious to hear our thoughts on the interior. Also, I will link the manual Gladiator review if you're curious to hear the thoughts on the manual transmission version. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.